الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور أأمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاصبا فستعلمون كيف نذير ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبضن ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Shaykhna.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah, we can see you and hear you clearly, and we are ready when you are, inshallah.
Right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina Abil Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin la siyama baqiyatillah fil aradin. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم. اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to have our weekly sessions on Islamic plan for life, and then inshallah on Nahjul Balagha. For Islamic plan for life, our topic tonight is truthfulness. And this is actually the last topic from Unit 2 of the book. Unit 2 is about social values, and truthfulness is the last one. Although truthfulness can have a personal aspect because you can be truthful to yourself also, or not truthful, but mostly it's between us and others, maybe other people, maybe between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, it is put in the Unit 2 on social values. This lesson starts with a story from the time that late Imam Khomeini used to be in Neaufle-Château near Paris in 1979. They wanted to make a documentary about a typical day of Imam Khomeini as the leader of opposition at that time. And one of the things that they wanted to show in that documentary was his meals, what he eats, and the people with him for lunch, for dinner. So the day that they were going to film, the lunch was, or the dinner was very simple. Although he had always simple meals, but that day was more simple because sometimes maybe they had also meat or chicken, but that day was very simple, maybe eggs or something. So Imam Khomeini said, this is not truthful, this is not honest, because we are not eating every day like this. Although this was not planned, this was not artificial, this was not fake, but he said, this is not our typical, our everyday meal. We sometimes have better, sometimes have less. This shows how careful was this person in the middle of his revolution, leading a revolution. People are on the streets, lots of difficulties. But these small things in the eyes of people, or many people, are great in the eyes of such people because they know that everything is a matter of serving the truth. And by not being honest or extra honest, we cannot work for the truth. There is another story which is not in the book. During the war between Iran and Iraq, the war that Saddam Hussein had imposed. So one day Imam Khomeini wrote a letter and was a statement. And in that statement, he had said to the people who were, defending the country, the soldiers, etc., that I pray for you with my entire being. با تمام وجود. In Farsi we say sometimes, با تمام وجود. For example, I love you by tamam wujud, or I promise this, or pray for you, means with my entire being. Then, before it was read, he asked the letter to be brought back to him, and he changed that. Said, I cannot say I pray for them ba tamam wujud, with my entire being. I can say I pray a lot for you, but I cannot say ba tamam wujud. So he changed it. Another story that remained in my mind is that when he was in Najaf, before Paris, for about 15 years he was in Najaf. Once, some people attributed something to him. And they were also people who were against the regime, they were active. So somehow they were close to the line of Imam Khomeini, which was trying to help people against the king and the last regime. But they attributed something to Imam Khomeini, and he heard about it, and he wanted to reject. Some of his students, they said, these are people that are working for the same cause, and if you say that what they quoted from you is not correct, they will be damaged, and it's not good, etc. Please listen very carefully. This is the way a leader can keep his own house, his own camp clear and clean. Because if you compromise little by little, these things get to the extent that they can take over. And the evil will take over virtues. He said, if someone says that I told him La ilaha illallah, which is the most obvious fact in Islam, such a fundamental fact, La ilaha illallah. If someone says I heard from Imam Khomeini or Ayatollah Khomeini, etc., that he said La ilaha illallah. For example, we were in a meeting with him in Najaf, and he said La ilaha illallah. He said, if someone quotes La ilaha illallah from me, and I have not said this, I would deny. No one should allow himself to misquote me. So his own emphasis on saying the truth, even small things that we think these are not a problem with my entire being or not. So careful about that. So careful about not any person misusing him and quoting him in the wrong way, etc. So these are some examples from our time and are good to help us appreciate the topic of tonight. In Islam, Sidq is not only about telling the truth. Sidq is more comprehensive. Sidq in action, in words, in intention, in faith. Lots of dimensions, inshallah, we'll talk about Sidq. But a very important aspect of Sidq is to tell the truth. So although truthfulness or Sidq is not limited to a speech, but Sidqul Hadith is a very important part of it. Because many things somehow go back to this or would be affected by this or would be tested by this. So we need to be truthful in every dimension of our being. But for sure, a very important aspect is being truthful in our speech. It's like the gate to the realm of truthfulness. If I tell the truth, then this would little by little bring harmony to my being. My words are honest, then my actions are honest, my intentions are honest, my promises are honest, everything becomes honest. Once a person went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had 4 bad habits. He was used to making 4 sins: drinking khamra, theft, immoral action and behavior, relations, adultery, and lying. So, shurb al-khamr, sariqa, fahsha, and kithb. He had, unfortunately, habit of making these 4 sins. He said to the Prophet, I cannot stop all these 4. You tell me which one is most important to stop. Tell me one of them. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him not to tell lies. Avoid kithb. He said, okay. And he thought, okay, he just tries not to tell lies, and he can continue with the rest. But when he left, whatever he wanted to do, which was bad, like adultery, I don't know, theft, etc., he was telling himself, if I do this and Rasulullah asks me, did you do this or not? I cannot say I did this. And I cannot say lie to Rasulullah. So avoiding kidhb led to avoiding all other sins. Because when you are honest and truthful, you behave in the way that you don't need to tell lies later. This is one reason why in our hadith it says, if all the bad things are put together in one room and locked, the key to that room is kithb. For example, Muhammad ibn Muslim, in an authentic hadith, quotes from Imam Baqir alayhi salam, إن الله عز وجل جعل للشر أقفالا وجعل مفاتيح تلك الأقفال الشراب والكذب شر من الشراب. This is one of those hadiths. One is that says all are in one room and Kezb is the key. This one is similar. It says Allah has put locks for shar. For every evil action, there is a lock. And sharab, khamr, is the key. Is the key for all those locks. But kezb is worse than sharab. Because someone who is lying, intentionally is lying, and there is also no limit. He would tell lies here, there, everywhere. And he's harming other people. Someone who is drinking khamr, he is mostly harming himself, his health, his relations, his business, his family, his reputation. Of course, this is wrong, but he is not that much harming other people directly. Sometimes they do, but not always. But the lying starts with harming people, misguiding people, deceiving people, etc. And those who get, for example, drunk and they don't understand, this happens maybe rarely. Rest of the day they are okay. But a liar, day, night, every time, may lie, tell lies. So Rasulullah told him, avoid kezb, telling lie, and he stopped by that all four bad things. The next heading is about truthfulness being a test, a criterion for understanding Iman, faith, taqwa. If you want to examine ourselves or other people and see whether we are okay or not, whether we are on the right track or not, whether we are mu'min or not, how can we test? How can we examine? Is prayer enough? Is fasting enough? Is Hajj enough? No. Because these are things that people may do habitually. They are used to these things. We need something that it's always a serious indicator of faith. Our hadith says, if you want to test people, test them with Sadq al-Hadith wa Ada' al-Amana. For example, Ishaq ibn Ammar and others have quoted from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in an authentic hadith. لا تغتروا بصلاتهم ولا بصيامهم. Don't be deceived by their prayer nor by their fasting. فإن الرجل ربما لهج بالصلاة والصوم حتى لو تركه استوحش. Sometimes a person has so much said prayer and fasted that if he doesn't say prayer or fast, he feels bad. It has become a habit. You see, sometimes people, for example, they know that by Sharia they shouldn't fast, but still they say that we must fast because it has become a habit. ولكن اختبروهم عند صدق الحديث وأداء الأمانة. But test them when it's a matter of telling the truth. Do they tell the truth or not? وأداء الأمانة. Delivering of the trust, to be trustworthy. Are they delivering the trust or not? We discussed this in the discussion before about trustworthiness. So this is a sign of Iman. And na'udhu billah, if someone is a liar, it's a sign of lacking Iman. In some hadith says, a moment may make some mistakes, may commit some sins, but a moment never tells lies. This is very much in conflict with the core of Iman, which is to accept the truth and open yourself to the truth, to dedicate yourself to the truth. A liar cannot be mu'min. There is a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam again, this is authentic. Husayn ibn Abil Ala quotes from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Inna Allah azza wa jal lam yab'ath nabiyyan illa bisidq al-hadith wa ada' al-amanah ila al-barr wal-fajr. Allah has not raised any messenger out of 124,000 prophets. Even one single prophet cannot be found that Allah has not made condition for them to observe and promote صدق الحديث وأداء الأمانة إلى البر والفاجر. Tell the truth, number one, and to deliver the trust back, whether good people have entrusted you or bad people, it doesn't matter. You have to give them back. You remember we mentioned this in the discussion about trustworthiness, that even if the sword by which Amir al-Mu'mineen was killed is given as amana, Imam says, I will give it back. So it's a sign of Iman and dedication to tell the truth. What are some obstacles? Why some people fail to tell the truth? Why maybe we sometimes fail to observe the truth? According to our hadith, there are several things that can be mentioned. One is not to be of a high and great caliber, not to have self-esteem, to be mean. A mean person who has no regard for himself always looks for quick solutions, shortcuts, whether they are moral or not, whether they are acceptable or not, doesn't matter, because there's so much feeling inferior and low that they think, I can not wait for a virtuous way to come up. I should get what comes available quickly. They don't trust themselves. They don't have self-confidence. They don't have self-esteem. Therefore, they tell lies and cheat. So, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example, is quoted as saying, a liar doesn't tell lies unless it is because of feeling mean or low or inferior inside. There's such a bad opinion about themselves and understanding of themselves. Therefore, the best solution for getting rid of dishonesty and telling lies is to empower ourselves with tawheed and with capacity that Allah has given to every human being. Tawheed tells us that Allah is the only supplier of good. All good comes from Him. And if He wants to give me something, no one can stop Him. And if He doesn't want to give me, no one can force Him. Quran says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإن يمسسك الله بضر فلا كاشف له إلا هو. If Allah wants a difficulty come to you, some harm comes to you, no one can disperse it. وَإِنْ يَمْسَسْكَ بِخَيْرٍ فَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. And if he wants good to come to you, he is capable of doing everything. So we should improve our relation with him, and we should rely on him. Does he want us to be dishonest? No. So why we are depriving ourselves from support of Rabbul Alameen, who has control over everything and he has the supplier of everything? Why we displease him by telling lies? And why we don't trust the capacity, the power that Allah has given every human being? That if you rely on Allah and then work hard, you can succeed. You don't need to cheat. You don't need to do zulm to yourself or others. And many times you think maybe by lying you benefit yourself, but in reality, this, even if it is true, which many times is not true, it's only for a short period of time. In the long term, no liar is successful. No one loves them. No one wants to promote them or gets close to them. Even enemies appreciate those who are truthful, let alone friends. Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam said, avoid lies, whether they are small or big, whether they are serious or humorous. You should avoid any kind of lie, because little by little it gets bigger and bigger. So you have to stop in the first place. Also, we have another hadith from Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, which says, no servant of Allah would taste Iman unless he or she would avoid and refrain from lying. حتى يترك الكذب جده وحذله. Whether it's serious or it's a joke. If I say a joke by telling lie and people think I am telling the truth, this is a problem. If from the beginning it's known that it is not true, then might be okay. If from the beginning it's clear, it's obvious. But sometimes, in order to make joke at the beginning, it's not clear, and people think other way, and this is why they laugh. This is a problem. It's a big problem. Some of these lies have moral problems. Some of them have moral and legal problems. Some are just against spirituality. Some are against spirituality, and also from fiqh perspective, they are sins. There is a story here in the section for self-study about some people who visited Rasulullah, and Rasulullah offered them some milk, and they maybe felt embarrassed, or for any reason, they said, we don't need, we are okay, we are good. And Rasulullah said, you are hungry and you are not truthful. This is two problems. And he said, even if someone says a small lie, this will be registered in the record of his deeds. So if someone says, have you had your dinner? Don't say yes if you didn't have your dinner. Or someone says, come and join us, and you say, I'm not hungry, and you are hungry. This is a lie and should be avoided. And Rasulullah had the responsibility to clarify and to teach people, and for sure they were happy to be guided and instructed by the Prophet. So this is a lesson for all of us, that even in such things we should not be taking liberty in speaking. Some of the outcomes of telling the truth. Number one, those who tell the truth would be very close to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like people who have good akhlaq that we had before. There is a beautiful hadith that Allama Majlisi rahmatullah alayh has mentioned. Rasulullah said, أقربكم مني غدا في الموقف. The nearest of you to me on the day of judgment are أصدقكم للحديث. Those of you who are the most truthful ones in their speech. وأعداكم للأمانة, and more trustworthy. وأوفاكم بالعهد, more loyal to their covenants. وأحسنكم خلقا, who have the best temper. وأقربكم من الناس, who are closest to people. They are humble and kind with people. These people would be closest to me on the day of judgment. So by telling the truth, we have this privilege of getting, inshallah, to a high position near the Prophet. Also, there is a great reward promised by Allah for those who are truthful. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse 109, Allah says, قَالَ اللَّهُ هَذَا يَوْمُ يَنْفَعُ الصَّادِقِينَ صِدْقُهُمْ. This is the day that truthfulness would benefit the truthful people. يوم ينفع الصادقين صدقهم لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا. They have gardens, underneath of those gardens rivers flow, they would be there forever. رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه. Allah is pleased with them, they are pleased with Allah. ذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. This is great achievement. So it is all for Sadiqin. Also, in another place in Surah Ahzab, verse 24, Allah says, لِيَجْزِيَ اللَّهُ الصَّادِقِينَ بِصِدْقِهِمْ. So that Allah would reward truthful people because of their truthfulness. So you will benefit from this in the hereafter by having great reward. Also, truthfulness would lead to more good actions. When you are honest and truthful, this will pave the way for doing good things. Because kidhb takes barakah from life, takes away tawfiq. But truthfulness brings tawfiq, brings barakah. A person who tells the truth, he would try to also be truthful in intentions, in actions, in everything. Otherwise, he would find it a contradiction. Truthfulness also would cause respect. People would love people who are truthful in society. Such people are very much appreciated. Also, those who tell the truth, little by little can rise to the level of being Siddiq. You first tell the truth, then you become Sadiq, then you become Siddiq. And Siddiq is most truthful. someone that every aspect of their behavior and their heart is truthful, is in harmony with the truth. From them, actually, you can understand what does it mean to be with the truth. They become signs of the truth, those who are Siddiq. In Surah Nisa, chapter 4, verse 69, we have this beautiful ayah that explains who are those that Allah has bestowed His blessings upon them. الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, that we have in Surah Hamd, are defined in this ayah. وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. Those who obey God and the Messenger, they are with the people that Allah has bestowed His blessings upon them. Who are those people that Allah has bestowed His blessing upon them, that we want to be with them? Minan Nabiyyin, prophets. Number 2, was-Siddiqeen, the most truthful people. It's such an important thing that even Allah, about prophets, He praises them with being Siddiq. وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ صَدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا. It's very important. Lady Mary, Maryam Salamullah alayha, Allah says, وَأُمُّهُ صَدِّيقَةٌ. She was Siddiq, which is female form for Siddiq. وَالشُّهَدَاء وَالصَّالِحِينَ. So, min al-Nabiyyin, prophets. Was-Siddiqeen, the most truthful ones. Was-Shuhada, the witnesses. Was-Salihin, the righteous people. So these are 4 categories that are at the top. And of course they can overlap. Like Ibrahim is Siddiq and Nabi at the same time. And he asked to join Salihin, Al-Haqni bis-Salihin. وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. These are very good rafiq. These are moderate friends, considerate friends with whom you can travel, and they will be very considerate. So to be Sadiq leads to become Siddiq, which then makes you at one of those 4 top categories. Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam said, a truthful person, by telling the truth, would get 3 things. And these 3 are not the only things, but as examples. People trust him. People love to make friendship with him. And people would have awe towards him. They respect him a lot. There's a hadith here also, it's very important, that how telling lies can affect even our financial situation. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, sometimes a person tells a lie. Because of lying, then he loses tawfiq for Salatul Layl, for prayer of night. And then when he loses Salatul Layl, his rizq would be decreased, because Salatul Layl is very good for getting more rizq, more sustenance. So telling a lie would lead to even your financial situation becoming affected. What are the signs of the people who are truthful? One sign is that their actions and words are confirming each other. They don't contradict. They're in harmony with each other. The other is that they are muhsin. They do good things. They are benefactors. The other thing is that they have peace of mind. They have confidence. And they are not all the time disturbed, all the time, worried. What happens if people realize I told a lie? And many times people who tell lies, even if they have good memory, their memory becomes terrible. Many times they make mistakes. They report in different ways, in different times, because they are so much worried. This is why some machines can detect liars. Maybe not 100%, but sometimes they use them even in the courts, because those who tell lies, they are disturbed internally. Those who have truthfulness as a quality, also they know that they should not say everything everywhere. So you shouldn't become a tape recorder that whatever is recorded, you say. So whatever you have seen, you heard, you say. No. Sometimes a truthful person may not share the truth that he knows with other people, because, for example, it becomes backbiting. It damages reputation of someone. It can endanger life of people, innocent people. It can create division and fight and enmity. If someone says something bad about his wife, for example, to me, or his father-in-law to me, and I say to that person what I have heard, truthfully, I don't add anything, I don't extract anything, but is this acceptable? No. Bilhaq doesn't mean just to tell the truth. It means something that is at the service of the greater truth. So you have to be careful. You hate lying, but it doesn't mean that you have to tell all the truth to everyone, everywhere, every time. Especially when it is leading to fight or enmity among people, when it leads to injustice, when it leads to disclosing secrets of people or secrets of the country, secrets maybe of a company that you have to respect. You are working in this company, then the rivals want to get the secrets to bring them down. You cannot say, because I'm truthful, I tell everything to everyone. You have to be careful. On the other hand, there can be exceptional cases, very exceptional cases, in which lying or telling lies might be permitted or even expected. Very exceptionally defined cases. One is Islahu Dhat al-Bayn. If the only way to bring two brothers, I don't know, husband and wife, in-laws, partners, the only way to bring them close and reconcile is to tell a lie, then you are permitted. Of course, first you try not to tell lies, you try other means, or you try just to do tawriya, which means you say something that can have two meanings, and you mean the one that person doesn't think, and he takes another one. But if needed and there's no other way, normally fuqaha say, for the sake of reconciliation, it is okay. Telling truth that adds to the problem is not permitted. This is facade. This is mischief. But telling a lie for reconciliation can be permitted. It shows how important it is to contribute to unity in family, in community, etc. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, according to this hadith, which is narrated by Sheikh Hurra Amili in Wasa'il al-Shia, Inna Allah Azza wa Jal أحب الكذب في الصلاح وأبغض الصدق في الفساد. Allah the Almighty loves or likes lying if it is for reconciliation, and He dislikes telling the truth if it is leading to mischief. So this is something also to remember. Finally, conclusion. So as a summary, we said that Truthfulness is one of the most important factors for human improvement, human perfection, human upliftment, for person, for society, for both. It has lots of benefits for us individually and socially, and such people have peace in mind, good relation with other people, high position in the society and wherever they are. And according to Islam, an-najatu fi-sidq, salvation is in truthfulness, and all the problems go back to telling lies and being dishonest. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who have truthfulness. And Rasulullah said, among you, those who are most truthful, those who are most trustworthy, those who are best in their temper, those who are closest to people would be closest to me. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to include us among the truthful people. Allah says, ittaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqin. You must have taqwa, you must fear God, and be with those who are truthful. Having taqwa alone is not possible. You have to be with good people, and you have to be one of them. First, you try to be close to them. You try to follow them. But then, inshallah, you will become one of them. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Thank you very much, Sheikh, for that full lecture. There have been messages of salams and
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Thanks that have come through from participants that have been listening to the session. There was a question that came earlier in the session, but you touched on it at the end, so I think this has now been answered. It basically says, if honesty is the basis of truthfulness, then why should every truth not be told? And you mentioned reasons towards the end of that session. And there was also people that were quoting some of the Quranic verses that you mentioned. For example, Surah 4, verse 69. We have it there in the chat for anybody who wants to refer to that. It's in English and also the Arabic version.
Beautiful.
Yes, apart from these messages, I've not seen any other questions. So I think it would be good if we take a break for 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Inshallah, between 9:05 and 9:10, we come back for Nahjul Balagha, inshallah. Let's say about 9:05, inshallah. Inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
وهو على كل شيء قدير. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير. ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير. وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير. إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير. وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير. إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير. وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور. ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير. هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور. أأمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاصبا فستعلمون كيف نذير. ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير. أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبضن ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير. أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي يَرْزُقُكُمْ إِنْ أَمْسَكَ رِزْقَهُ بَلْ لَجُّوا فِي عُتُوٍّ وَنُفُورٍ أَفَمَنْ يَمْشِي مُكِبًّا عَلَى وَجْهِهِ أَهْدَىٰ أَمَّن يَمْشِي سَوِيًّا عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مستقيم. قل هو الذي أنشأكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون. قل هو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين. قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين. فلما رأوه زلفة سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون. قل أرأيتم إن أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب أليم. قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين. قل أرأيتم إن أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتيكم بماء معين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والقلم وما يسطرون. ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون وإن لك لأجرا غير ممنون وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم. فستبصر ويبصرون بأيكم المفتون. إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين. فلا تطع المكذبين ودوا لو تدهن فيدهنون ولا تطع كل حلاف مهين هماز مشاء بنميم مناع للخير معتد أثيم عتل بعد ذلك زنيم أن كان ذا مال وبنين إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين سنسمه على الخرطوم إنا بلوناهم كما بلونا أصحاب الجنة إذ أقسموا ليصرمنها مصبحين ولا يستثنون فطاف عليها طائف من ربك وهم نائمون فأصبحت كالصريم فتنادوا مصبحين أن اغدوا على حرثكم إن كنتم صارمين فانطلقوا وهم يتخافتون ألا يدخلنها اليوم عليكم مسكين وغدوا على حرد قادرين فلما رأوها قالوا إنا لضالون بل نحن محرومون قال أوسطهم ألم أقل لكم لولا تسبحون قالوا سبحان ربنا إنا كنا ظالمين فأقبل
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. How are you, Sheikh?
Thank you very much.
Just before we get started, maybe it's a good time for me to give a quick announcement just to show people the poster again. And with today being the 16th of December, as you can see, next Wednesday, 23rd of December, inshallah, will be the last session of the semester. 23rd December, next Wednesday. Sheikh, when you are ready, we are ready for the next session for Introduction to Nahjul Balagha.
Inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-aliyyil azim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Abil Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad. Wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. La siyama baqiyatillah fil aradin. أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم. اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of Introduction to Nahjul Balagha based on Ayatollah Mutahhari's book. Today we want to talk about governance and justice. One of the issues that you find very much present in Nahjul Balagha is Imam's reference to the issue of governance and justice. This would be more understandable if we remember that these are all or most of them said when Imam was also exercising political leadership as Khalifatul Muslimin. All the things that we have from Imam Ali alayhi salam in Nahjul Balagha seems that they are all from that 5 years. Because in the time of the Prophet, he was keeping silent. He didn't give lectures. Maybe rarely when there was a need, because Rasulullah was there. For 25 years after Rasulullah, also he was not giving, public speech or lectures, etc. Therefore, as Allama Tabatabai has said, most of what we have, almost all, are from those 5 years. So he was himself aware of situations in the Muslim Ummah and knew that people are very much suffering from bad policies of before, and how Islam is unfortunately kept as a name, but some of the things have gone to the wrong direction, and how much Islamic society needed a just government, a government that would treat justice as a top priority, etc. So, if we want to understand Nahjul Balagha, we need to bring all these topics. We talked already about worship, worshippers, spirituality, etc. But another key topic is governance and justice. Some people may be surprised why Imam Ali talks this much about governance and justice. Why he doesn't keep it to the level of prayer and fasting and charity and ibadah and salatul layl. But Islam is a comprehensive religion, and someone who is brought up by the Prophet and is inspired by Quran would reflect this comprehensive nature of Islam in his word, in his actions. So Quran tells us that all the messengers were sent by Allah in order to help people establish social justice. In Surah Hadid, verse 24, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لقد أرسلنا رسلنا بالبينات وأنزلنا معهم الكتاب والميزان ليقوم الناس بالقسط. Allah says, we have sent our messengers with bayinat, with manifest signs, and we send down with them the book and the scale or the balance, ليقوم الناس بالقسط, so that people would establish justice, social justice. Anbiya and Rusul came to help people with establishing social justice and equity. They didn't want to establish by themselves, because this is something that needs people's participation. لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. And this qist is so important that when we talk about end of time and the mission of Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, we say, as said by the Prophet in many hadiths that Sunni and Shia have narrated, يَمْلَأُ اللَّهُ بِهِ الْأَرْضَ قِسْطًا وَعَدْلًا بَعْدَمَا مُلِئَتْ ظُلْمًا وَجَوْرًا. So that qist is going to be established finally, but people have to be ready to help Imam Mahdi, because if it was going to happen miraculously, it should have happened in the time of messengers and prophets and previous imams. The reason for waiting is to wait till people are happy to establish under the leadership, but with their own efforts. So how can Imam Ali alayhi salam neglect this important issue of qist and justice? It's impossible. Therefore, we are not surprised that there is so much mention of justice and social justice and fair distribution of resources in Nahjul Balagha. If it was not like that, we would be surprised. What is the value of justice? Late Ayatollah Mutahhari says, successorship to the Prophet is so important that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the famous ayah of Tabligh, which is ayah 66 of Surah Ma'idah, says, Ya ayyuhar rasul balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik فإن لم تفعل فما بلغت رسالته والله يعصمك من الناس. O messenger, deliver to the people what has been sent down to you from your Lord, and if you don't do that, if you fail to do so, you have not delivered his risala, you will not have delivered his message. Successorship to the Prophet, continuity of Islamic leadership, having a system of governance that follows the path of the Prophet is so important that if Rasulullah keeps silent and doesn't talk to the, Allah says you would be not delivering the message. So it's not a minor, tiny issue. It's something as important as Rasala. And this is why in some discussions about Imam and Walaya, we said that Allah has made al-mawaddata fil qurba, love for the kinship, for the Ahlul Bayt, return for Rasala. La as'alukum alayha ajra illa al-mawaddata fil qurba. The return should be proportionate to the action. The reward that you want to give or the payment, if you want to pay to someone who has worked for you, has to be proportionate, cannot be less. Al-mawadda fil qurba, love for Ahlul Bayt, was the way to carry on commitment to Rasala. And this is why then Allah also says, إِلَّا مَنْ شَاءَ أَنْ يَتَّخِذَ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِ سَبِيلًا. The same sabil in this way can be continued. So, we are not expecting from Imam Ali to be silent about the issue of Islamic society, Islamic governance, successorship to the Prophet. Then Ayatollah Mutahhari quotes a kind of idea from Allama Tabatabai. And again here he has a very respectful way of referring to Allama Tabatabai. And he says, Hazrat Ustad Allama Tabatabai Ruhi Fida. His Eminence, my teacher, Allama Tabatabai, may my soul be his ransom. At that time, both of them were alive. So someone in his book talks like this about his teacher is very important. So, what is that point? Allama Tabatabai Rahmatullah Alayh, commenting on verse 144 of Surah Al Imran, chapter 3, verse 144, commenting on this verse in an essay which is entitled Velayat wa Hukumat, Guardianship and Governance. He has made this comment. He says, when Allah says, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ أَفَإِنْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلَ انقلبتم على أعقابكم. Prophet is not except a messenger, and before him there were previous messengers. If he dies or is killed, are you going to go backward? Allah says this ayah means that if the Prophet dies or is killed, you should not get stuck. You should find who is the qualified, the legitimate leader after the Prophet. Follow him and continue. You cannot stop or go backward. You have to carry on. Even someone like the Prophet, the founder of this ummah, if he dies or is killed, you should find the next leader and follow. So, Ayatollah Mutahari says, this shows how much leadership is important in Islam. We have hadith, he says, we have hadith from the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that if 3 people are traveling, as of course, if it's more, it becomes even more important. But even if 3 people are traveling, then they should choose one of them as the leader. This shows that how much leadership is. Leadership is not a privilege. Leadership is a job, it is a necessity, and whoever is a leader is serving. It's not that, it says, you have to serve me. But we need to listen to him. When someone is serving our interest, we have to listen to him. Otherwise, we would harm our own interests. By division, we can never serve our interests. So, this is why Imam Ali in Nahjul Balagha talks a lot about the need for governance and for a legitimate leader. One of the issues is the necessity of having governance and system and leader, because Kharijites had this false argument. They were misusing and misinterpreting the verses of the Quran which talks about Allah being the lawmaker. Quran says, "In al-hukmu illa lillah." There is no hukm except for Allah. What does hukm mean? Means jurisdiction belongs to Allah, legislation belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And who would be governor also is decided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But not that Allah himself is coming and governing. People should implement the legislation and the laws of Allah. Khawarij used to say, "Ain al-hukmu illa lillah," so no one should be leading us. They denied leadership. Muawiyah should not lead. Ali also should not lead. This was what Imam Ali called a misinterpretation of a true point. كلمة حق يراد بها الباطل. إن الحكم إلا لله, it's true. But what is meant here, which is denial of government and governor, this is wrong. This would lead to anarchy. Amir al-Mu'mineen says there must be a governor, good or bad. What does it mean? It means that if we have no system at all, if we have anarchy and people start, fighting and killing and looting, or those who have, power, they oppress the weakers, no one is answering, no one is responsible, it becomes a chaos. We should try to have good leaders, legitimate leaders, but having no system at all is worse. We actually have seen these years that how some countries, after changing and dismissing their previous regimes, because they didn't manage to establish a new system, a new regime, they ended with civil wars for years. Many people were killed, and maybe the situation is much worse than what they used to have before. So there must be a system. So this is one of the first things that we can say Nahjul Balagha offers, that there is a need for a legitimate leader. At the same time, Imam Ali alayhi salam very much highlights his reason for emphasizing on governance. It's not a kind of worldly interest. It's not a thirst for power, na'udhu billah. He says, for me, this position by itself is not valuable. In different expressions. For example, once he was repairing his shoes, and he told to Ibn Abbas that ruling you is less important, less valuable for me than this old shoes that I am repairing, except if I am able to revive justice, to stop zulm. So for me, it doesn't have intrinsic value, substantial, essential value. It's just as a means to serve the truth, to serve justice, to help people. In some place, he says in Khutbah Shakhshaqiyya that if it was not that Allah has made a covenant with ulama not to be silent when some people are dying out of eating too much and some people are dying out of hunger, and if there were no supporters, you would have found that I would have dismissed this Khilafah, and I would have treated it as I treated this before. And the expression that he uses, he says that you would have found this dunya of you and this position, etc. أزهد عندي من عفتة عنزا. It's less valuable than the water which comes out of the nose of a goat. There's no value in that water. And Imam uses something that everyone dislikes. No one would say, I have interest, I have regard for that. Imam says this dunya and this governance for me is by itself less valuable than this. Means nothing, zero. But I have responsibility when there is support, when people want, when people help, to work for establishment of justice. In Sermon 214, he talks about rights and how rights are mutual. If I have right over you, you have also right over me. So it means I have rights and responsibilities. You have rights and responsibilities or duties. It's mutual. And then he says, وَأَعْظَمُ مَا افْتَرَضَ اللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ مِنْ تِلْكَ الْحُقُوقِ حَقُّ الْوَالِي عَلَى الرَّعِيَّةِ وَحَقُّ الرَّعِيَّةِ عَلَى الْوَالِي. And some of the greatest rights that Allah has recognized and Allah has made it necessary and obligatory are the rights of governors over citizens and citizens over governors. This is very, very important branch of rights. Then he says, فَرِيدَةٌ فَرَضَهَا اللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ لِكُلٍّ عَلَى كُلٍّ. Everyone has a responsibility here, because everyone is either ruling part of a ruling party group or is ruled. So there is always lots of mutual duties and responsibilities. فَجَعَلَهَا نِظَامًا لَأَنفُسِهِمْ وَعِزًّا لِدِينِهِمْ. If these rights are observed, they would have a stability in their system, and also their religion would be respected, be dignified. Muslim Ummah or any Ummah cannot have their dignity preserved without having proper relation between governors and people. فليست تصلح الرعية إلا بصلاح الولاة ولا تصلح الولاة إلا باستقامة الرعية. Subjects, people, cannot be in good condition unless wulat, those who are wilaya, guardians, are in good condition. They are righteous, they are not corrupt. And also governors, guardians cannot be in good condition unless people are steadfast. فإذا أدت الرعية إلى الوالي حقه وأدى الوالي إلى الرعية حقها. If both parties deliver their duties and observe the rights of the other party, عز الحق بينهم وقامت مناهج الدين واعتدلت معالم العدل. Very beautiful. If they do this, then the truth becomes strong and aziz among them, becomes firm among them. And the paths of religion would be established, and the ways of justice would be in order. And then the sunan, the religious traditions, the religious teachings, the religious way of life would be able to be flowing, would be able to be implemented. فَصَلُحَ بِذَلِكَ الزَّمَانِ. Then that age becomes right age. And there would be hope in continuity of this system. And enemies would be dispersed. So we need right relation between governors and guardians and citizens. They should respect each other's rights, do their own responsibilities properly, so that we can have a system that would be strong and would help people to reach their ends, and enemies would be dispersed. Then Ayatollah Mutahari talks about value of justice. He says Islam not only teaches us new things, but also give us a new logic, a new way of reasoning, like a teacher. Sometimes a teacher just teaches new things. Sometimes a teacher changes your way of reasoning, gives you a new attitude, a new way of looking at things, evaluating things. What does it mean? He says, we may know and learn new things, but what is more important is how to prioritize, how to organize. There are things that are more fundamental, that act as principles, as foundations, and then you structure everything and build everything upon them. If someone changes those fundamental principles, your way of reasoning and therefore your logic would change. Islam teaches us not only new things, but teaches us how to understand what is more important. Actually, this is a great part of wisdom, to understand what is important, what is more important, what is bad, what is worse, what is good, what is better. We are not only choosing between good and bad. Sometimes we have to prioritize good things and say, this is good, but this is better, and this is necessary. So This is very important, how to prioritize. He mentions the example of iffa, chastity. Some people may say it's important, but very little. Some people may think, no, it's very, very important. We talked in Islamic Plan for Life a few weeks ago about chastity in Islam and how important it is. Justice is the same. In Islam, justice is very, very fundamental. It's not by chance that some schools of Islam, like the Shiites, have chosen justice as one of their principles. Divine justice, and of course, it has to be implemented among us and be reflected as social justice. We cannot believe in divine justice and then do zulm to each other. So justice is very, very fundamental. In some lectures about search for justice as one of the 3 characteristics of Shia Islam, I have spoken about justice. Here we just follow the book for the most part. Ayatollah Mutahari says, someone who was clever as Amir al-Mu'mineen. A very good question. He said, Al-adlu afdal am al-jud. Is justice better or generosity? We know justice is good. We know generosity is good. But which one is better? And if I have to choose between justice and generosity, which one should I choose? Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam said that justice is better than generosity. And he makes 2 points. He says, Al-adlu yada'u al-umura mawadhi'aha wal-jud yukhrijuha min jihataha. Adl means to put everything in its right and due place. But generosity means to put them in another place, because you are giving more than what they deserve. As a temporary measure, it's good. As sometimes a necessity might be needed that I show generosity. But we should plan in the way that justice would be able to be established all over, and then people would not be in need of our generosity to them. It's like charity. Charity is good, but we should work towards establishment of justice, equal opportunities for everyone, and then there will be no need that much for charity. Unless, for example, someone is ill or someone is not able to work for temporary or secondary reasons. Ayatollah Mutahari says, like, for example, a human body. When you are ill, one part of body is ill, other parts of body maybe work harder to compensate, to fill the gap. But it shouldn't be always like this. It should be healthy, and every part should play its role properly. Another thing that Amir al-Mu'mineen said is al-adlu sa'isun 'am wal-judu 'aridun khas. Adl is a general law, a general way of disciplining, and generosity is a secondary consideration, is a secondary measure, a temporary measure. Adl is much better. So Imam is teaching us that even between adl and jud, we should choose adl. And he says, فَالْعَدْلُ أَشْرَفُهُمَا وَأَفْضَلُهُمَا. Among generosity and justice, justice is more honored, more privileged. This is not saying that you shouldn't be generous, but it means that we as a community have to work for establishing justice so that we don't need generous people to sacrifice or to have a favor upon people. People should be given their rights and be able to establish themselves, to build their capacity, and be able to be independent. Injustice cannot help. When Imam Ali alayhi salam became Khalifa, there were problems because, especially in the time of the third Caliph, justice was compromised and some people were given some privileges, some more access to Baytul Mal, public treasury, more money, etc. So Imam inherited such situation, but he didn't want to compromise about justice. Some people said, Imam, okay, from now on, you try to be just. Forget what has happened before. But he said, Al-Haqqul Qadim La yubtiluhu shay'un. An old right, nothing can falsify it. If someone has misappropriated, for example, has stolen money of someone, cannot say because time has passed, leave it. Even he said, if they have used this money to marry and they have used it as dowry for their wives, I would claim it back. فَإِنَّ فِي الْعَدْلِ سَعَةٍ. He said, because in justice, although justice might be difficult, but there is a sa'ah, there is space, opportunity for everyone. وَمَنْ ضَاغَ عَلَيْهِ الْعَدْلِ فَالْجَوْرُ عَلَيْهِ أَضْيَقُ. If justice is pressurizing you, injustice is more pressurizing. So we should cope with difficulties and sometimes bitterness of justice, but because in the long term it's better for us. And then there's a heading that we cannot be indifferent towards injustice. In Khutbah Shaqshaqiyya, the third sermon of Nahjul Balagha, as I said before, he says that لولا حضور الحاضر وقيام الحجة بوجود الناصر وما أخذ الله على العلماء أن لا يقار على كذبة ظالم ولا صغب مظلوم لألقيت حبلها على غاربها ولسقيت آخرها بكأس أولها ولألفيتم دنياكم هذه أزهد عندي من أفتة عنز. Had it not been that there is a covenant between Allah and ulama, those who have knowledge, Allah has made a covenant that they should not be indifferent when there is injustice. When some people are dying out of eating too much and some people are dying out of hunger. And there is helper. إتمام الحجة بوجود قيام الحجة بوجود الناصر. Hujjah is complete when there are helpers. If there was no such covenant and no helper, then I would have left this. We cannot be indifferent towards injustice. Also, as you know, he said in his will, كُونَا لِلظَّالِمِ خَصْلًا وَلِلْمَظْلُومِ عَوْنًا. And justice also should not be sacrificed or compromised because of some interest. Sometimes, people were telling Imam Ali salam, to compromise, to, slow down. People are not prepared for justice. They create, troubles for you. Give them something from Baytul Mal, to silence them, etc. And he said in Sermon 124, أَتَأْمُرُونِي أَنْ أَطْلُبَ النَّصْرَ بِالْجَوْرِ. Do you command me, do you ask me to seek victory by zulm? Do you want me to give the rights of poor people to these people who are making noise so that I can succeed? He said, I will never do this. And then he says, لو كان المال لي لسويت بينهم. If this money belonged to me, I would have distributed it fairly and justly. If it was my personal money. فكيف وإنما المال مال الله. But this is not my personal money. It belongs to Allah. So even if it was Ali's money, I would have distributed with fairness and justice. And now it's malullah, it's not my money. So I have to be extra careful. Inshallah, in the next session, we will continue this discussion. Of course, justice needs commitment, needs sacrifice, and needs wisdom. Because many times people are not able to work for justice and actually harm the cause of justice by unwise behavior, which would give more chances to unjust people and oppressors to harm, to be more vicious. So wisdom, of course, is very important. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us understand the beautifully balanced system of Islam and put everything in its right place, inshallah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Allahumma salli ala. Thank you very much, Sheikh, as always, for an excellent session on Nahjul Balagha. And alhamdulillah, it's good to see that it's not just us who are benefiting, but the sessions are going very far and wide. There's many thank you messages coming from places as far as India. And I can't go through all of the thank you messages, but there's a lot that have come through. So everyone is sending salam and giving thanks.
Thank you very much, all of you. May Allah bless you. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
And we should also give our thanks to one of the sisters who's been making notes on the chat for all of the kind of Quranic verses and the sermons of Nahjul Balagha that you've been mentioning.
Very good. May Allah bless you.
Very good reference for us when we go back to this.
MashaAllah. May Allah bless you.
I'm seeing a question here which I will read out. It says, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for both of the excellent lectures which are inextricably linked. Currently, society is moving further away from truth and justice, and leaders lie with great arrogance. If an individual attempts to speak the truth, he is accused of lies. Is there any Islamic advice on how to reverse this situation?
Very good. Yes, as I said, we need wisdom, and we need also leadership, because most of the time one individual or few individuals on their own cannot do that much. We need to find like-minded people. We need to find people who can lead us, and in a united, organized way, with wisdom, with patience, work for long-term success of justice. Sometimes people choose the easiest and shortest ways, and just they think that, by reactionary behavior they can serve. No. You have to have wisdom and find out the most productive means that in the long term serve the cause of justice. In some lectures on practical wisdom or wise activism, I try to mention few points.
Thank you. We have another question here. Is there any situation where justice would not be a priority?
Justice is always priority, but how to work for justice is not always the same. Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein both worked for justice, but one through peace treaty, one in another way. Even Imam Hussein alayhi salam, for 10 years in the time of Muawiyah, did something, And when Yazid took over and forced him to give bay'ah, did something else. We cannot always do the same thing in every circumstances. Amir al-Mu'minin himself for justice, what did he do in the time of Uthman? He had to see that what is wise. He didn't want to cause division in the Muslim Ummah and weaken the Ummah's unity in the time that whole Islam can be in danger. So we have to measure what justice requires from us, and are we going to lose more, or are we going to gain more if we do this action or that action? So there is no single universal response. We have to know this. We cannot repeat the same policy everywhere. We cannot repeat the same slogan everywhere. We have to be wise advocates of justice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lovely.
So looking at the comments, I think that's all of the questions for Nahjul Balagha. However, there was one previous question for Islamic Time for Life. Maybe I can just bring that up just now. Yes. You mentioned lying. I can't remember whether this was discussed in the session, but the question is, what is the root cause of lying?
We said that the main cause or the root of lying is not having a dignified character, to be mean, to be low in your own self-esteem, which would then lead to selfishness and trying to find easy ways. You are not able to stand for success. You want to cheat. You want to find shortcuts. You want to take away people's rights so that you can succeed. This is meanness in the character that causes lying.
Thank you. And I noticed, Sheikh, you've discussed wisdom a lot today in terms of how we should tackle issues. This comment says wisdom is a short word that does not come with shortcuts. Maybe we can ask, would you agree, and would you say, what is the best way for us to attain this kind of practical wisdom that is many times discussed?
Yeah, so we had a series on wisdom, on what is wisdom, understanding wisdom. A series of 7-8 lectures in Qom, in the shrine of Lady Masuma. 7-8 lectures in London, similar. Practical wisdom in the Quran. We had it in the house in London. Wise activism, we had it in Canada and several places. So you have to take time to explore the concept of wisdom. But basically, if I want to say, just a short answer, wisdom means that you find the best way to support your ideals, to bring them to the realm of realities, to make them firm. Muhkam, hikmah comes from hukm, ihkam. When something is an ideal, it's abstract. When it is implemented as a reality, it becomes concrete. Hikmah is to know how to bring your ideals into the real world. Just to know the ideals and repeat them is not enough. Hikmah is to know the means, the ways, the helpers, the obstacles, and how to use all these things in the way that can help you get your ideals into realities.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the end of the comments. As always, very insightful sessions. Very good to be reminded of the unique statements by Imam Ali alayhi salam with regards to dunya and leadership, and also the high regard for justice that was discussed today. So that brings us to the end, where inshallah we follow you as well.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا وامن علينا برضاه وهب لنا رأفته ورحمته ودعاه وخيره. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. O Allah, please forgive all our sins and mistakes and shortcomings. Please help us in our struggle against our own nafs, against our own vicious traits of character, against our own weaknesses. Please make us as you expect. Please choose us for serving you, for serving your cause, serving the truth. Please help our Ummah and humanity in this generation to understand their historical responsibilities and work for establishing universal peace and justice and solidarity. Please give shifa to all people who are ill. Please send your rahmah and maghfirah to all mu'mineen and mu'minat who have passed away, especially those who have rights upon us. Please keep us and our youths on the right path. Please strengthen our families and communities and institutions and protect them. Please save us from divisions and suspicions and lack of trust. And please make our affairs easy. Please make our Imam Zaman happy with us and hasten his coming and help us to serve him before and after he comes. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Thank you very much, Sheikh, and once again, and inshallah look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.